Well, we got a pretty good dumping of snow last night, and then in the next few days following the snow, we're actually going to be dipping down into the negatives. So we figured our wood stove is going to be going a little bit more than normal. So this would be a good time to start rendering down some of that beef tallow that we have, and probably even make some bone broth too. I don't know if we showed it before, but we did get a chest freezer to help with storing the half a cow that we got, along with this upright. I absolutely love this upright, but you really can just really cram in a lot more into this big one. But we have plenty of freezer space now. I think what I'm going to do is just start with one bag at a time. We have a few cast iron pans that need a little help with being seasoned just because we haven't used them that much. So I think our plan is every time we get out a bag of tallow to render down, we are just going to use a different pan to kind of cook it down in, and then it'll help kind of season that pan a little bit too. We are not going to be rendering down all of the tallow that we have. It's all pre-ground, so if we wanted to, it's ready to go for that. But I think some of it we might also save, hopefully that we get a moose next year, and then if we wanted to, we can mix some of that in with the moose meat. So we're just going to kind of, one at a time, take them out and use them. We're not going to do all of it at once. So we have the bag of bones as well. I'm going to grab a full. We have a half bag in here too. But... all right. So I think we're going to start this tomorrow. I'm just going to bring this in today so it can start thawing out. So I'll come back tomorrow to grab some of the bones. I think I for sure want to tackle that rib cage. And then we'll see what else we can fit into that pot. We are going to have to get the Sawzall out and cut them up into some smaller pieces. So we'll just wait and see on that. But for now, we've got our bag of fat. And we're going to head into the house. So this is the first pan that we decided to use with rendering down this tallow. We don't use it that often, so it definitely needs some help. Hi. Hi. So this is basically just your standard size skillet, but it is a little bit taller. I think we typically use this to make some chili sometimes, but we don't use it too much. So this should be good for the pan. And I did bring this inside. And then I decided that it's warm enough but still cold enough outside that we can just use it as a refrigerator. So I put it back outside just on the deck, but it is actually a little bit firmer than I thought it was going to be, which is good. But it might take a little bit to get it in the pan to start cooking down. Alright, I think I'm going to let there's just a little bit left in the bag. Not too much more, and it will all fit in this pan, but I'm going to let this kind of cook down just a little bit. It's going to be easier to stir right now before I add all of it, and then that way I can kind of keep an eye on it. It should go pretty quick since it's pre-ground. We should easily be able to fit the rest of it in there now. still have a few big chunks that haven't fully melted yet, so I am going to keep the lid on. But once most of those big chunks are melted, I'm going to take it off, because at that point you do want to kind of cook out a lot of the moisture that's in there. But I like to keep the lid on until we get to that point, just because it kind of helps it go a little bit faster. So now that most of this is fully melted, I'm going to take it off of the trivet so it's actually sitting on the stove and getting just a little bit warmer. So now the goal, as far as I understand it, is just to cook out as much of the moisture as possible, and then all of like the little meat bits and stuff that just aren't very good, they'll kind of get a little bit crispy looking, and as those kind of start to form, we'll scoop them out, because I'm pretty sure as few of those you have in your fat as possible, the cleaner that the fat will end up being in the end. So we're just going to kind of let it keep cooking and keep stirring it for a while. To be honest, I think this looks absolutely disgusting.
It's very yellow.
It's really yellow, and like there's a good like some meat chunks in there too. It's just, it looks like the grossest soup ever. So a lot of this has been cooked down and liquefied. So what I'm going to do next is I have another pot. This one is quite a bit smaller, but it also is not in the best shape. It could do with some seasoning. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scoop out all the bits out of this one and put them into this pot instead. That's going to allow all the liquid to stay a cleaner tallow in the end, and then this one might end up getting just a little bit dirtier. Which is fine. We want to keep the majority of it nice and clean though, so we're just going to scoop it out and put it in this one. And I'm going to use this, and we'll see how it goes. So this is how much liquid we have left in this one. And you can see there's still a bunch of little bits in there, but I'm not too worried about it because we did get quite a lot out of there, where this is pretty much completely full. I think this is a 2-quart pot, but I'm not 100% positive about that. So we're just going to try to get this one up to a little bit more of a boil. And then this one we're going to set on the cooler side of the stove with the lid on and just try to get it slowly start melting again. We're just gonna dump it really quick. Okay. It's very yellow. So now that I have this one emptied into here, and then we're going to start filling our jars, I'm going to take that other smaller pot and dump it into this and get it on the wood stove again, because it's a wider surface, and then I can kind of see just how much liquid we've gotten out of there, because I don't think we've gotten very much yet. hasn't gotten that much liquid yet. I think the surface area of this pan is going to help it out a lot more than this little one. Looks like we got not quite, but almost 6 cups of liquid. And then now what we need to do is pour it into our jars. So in the past, we've used just 1/2 pint jars, either the normal shape like that or the slightly shorter ones like this. But this time around, we had a different idea. We have, now that we've started food with Rowan, we have some baby food jars that I think will be perfect for it. So we're going to try to use these. It doesn't actually need to be canned afterwards. It just needs to basically just harden and sit on a shelf and it'll be fine. So I think that this will be a perfect use for these jars that we just kind of have sitting around. We don't have too many of these jars right now. We do kind of a mixture of everything with her. I'd really like it for her just to eat everything that we're eating for mealtime. But also we just have bought some baby food. I've also made some. We're kind of doing a little bit of everything. So we don't have a ton of these right now, but I think we should have enough to fit all of this liquid inside of it. Oh my goodness. It's actually not too bad. Could you get me a square paper towel? Yeah, that's not too bad. It's a little light on that one, but that's okay. The cold weather always brings just the sunshine and the super pretty reflection on those trees. I love it so much, but that also means it is now cold enough to warrant a batch of broth on our stove. So I've got our pot. We are going to the freezer and we're going to fill it up as much as we can. So there's one section of ribs that we have. I think I'm going to find just a couple more bones to cut up and put in there too, so we can really have this pot completely full. The cover doesn't dip down at all, so we can go all the way to the 15-quart mark for sure. So we've got a bag of some smaller ones in here. I think we're just going to try to fill in some of the gaps with these. There is a nice full pot of bones for some broth. It is the following morning, and I think the broth is ready to get canned up. I think we've had it going for almost 20 hours now. We washed some jars, and we have them sitting in the oven, so they will be nice and warm because we are going to do this hot packing. And then I also just have a new pot of water, so that when we do bring it over to the propane, we'll just have some nice toasty water like everything else. So it's all the same hotness. Whoa, okay. I guess since I could break the bone in half, the dog can probably have them. I wasn't actually expecting that. Irie, you want a treat? Come here. You took? Come good. Hey, no, right here. Irie. I've got it. Spin. Oh, sit. Oh, shake. Oh, thank you. we can give her these bones. We're gonna try to skim out as much of the fat first. Are you looking for more? How about we just let that settle in your stomach before we give you more? All right, so I skimmed off pretty much as much of the fat as I could, just using a measuring cup. And this is how much I got out of there, so not bad. That is a considerable amount. The rest of the jars are probably just going to have a little bit in there. And right now we are sitting just around 10 quarts, I think. So I think there's still a bunch of bones in there. We're probably going to end up with more than 7 jars, but if we do have an extra one, that's fine. I'm probably just going to keep it in the fridge and we'll just use it right away. Well, we had 7 jars going into the canner, and we only got 5 that came out of the canner. So we actually had 2 of them break, and I have a couple guesses as to maybe why. I'm not really sure. I haven't had a ton of issues with jars breaking in the past. But we're still using some jars for the first time since we did our move here, so there is a chance that maybe some of them got weakened in the drive. And then also, this was my first time that I tried hot packing my jars. Usually I let everything cool down so it's easier just for me to work with everything without burning my fingers. And I tried doing it hot this time since everything was at a really warm temperature. I had the jars in the oven getting nice and warm. I used hot water in the canner, and then of course the broth going into the jars was nice and hot also. So it could be I did everything right with that, and that isn't what happened, but also that was a new thing that I changed on it. I'm not really sure. And then also just working with a propane stove instead of an electric one, I'm just not used to that either. So I think I do struggle just a little bit with maybe heating it up too quickly. There was a moment when I started canning that I did hear a noise that had me a little concerned, and I wasn't really sure what was going on in there. And that was at the beginning when I was heating it up for the first time. So again, maybe then I didn't have everything quite hot enough and I was just heating it up too quickly. I don't know. But either way, we got 5 jars, and I think I'm pretty happy with how this stuff turned out. It looks really nice. And I think we'll have at least 2 more batches of this to go with bones that are still in our freezer. So even though everything may not have gone 100% smoothly, I'm still really happy with how everything turned out. We got some really nice tallow, and then we got some really nice broth. There is one thing that I wanted to say about the tallow that we noticed though. I think this is only our 3rd time now rendering down tallow, and this is kind of one of our examples that we still have. It's fairly white. There's just a hint of yellow to it. When I did this batch, there was a little bit of sediment on the bottom, so it wasn't perfectly clean. And this is what this new batch looks like, which all of our other ones have looked just like this, pretty similar. And then this is what the new one looks like. So it is really yellow. Let me do it side by side. Got a bucket right there. You see the difference? So this stuff is way more yellow than that, but we did a really good job. It's nice and clean all the way through. But we just found that really interesting. I tried looking it up to see why it might be a little bit more yellow than what we're used to seeing. And I think what's going on is it just has to do with the quality of feed that this cow was eating before we got it, which just resulted to a higher beta carotene or something like that, which I think is like a vitamin K type thing, which causes the yellow in there. So I just found that kind of interesting. So this is just kind of part of our trying to use all of the cow, and it feels really nice to be able to have a little bit more tallow in some nice small jars and some beef broth on our counters now. Now I just have to find somewhere on these shelves to put them, because I just reorganized them where everything's full. So